The Insta360 X4. Insta360 were ever so kind enough to send this camera over with a load of kit for me to really put it through its paces. And before we start off today's review, I just want to give a massive shout out to Insta360. No, they are not sponsoring this video, unfortunately, but they are giving me a huge opportunity to show off how amazing this camera really is. So we've got the old One X2 here, which I've got in this little case, and I think we should start off today's review by going over perhaps one of the best things about the latest iteration of these cameras. This X4 comes with this nice little case, little plastic case to go around it, and it also comes with lens guards as well. That's a huge game changer. Because these cameras are quite expensive, the lenses are perhaps one of the most vulnerable parts of the camera. If it falls over like this, which it has done on a number of occasions, well, this one has anyway, you want to protect the lenses. If you get scratches on the lenses, that's it. The camera's pretty much done for, at least on that side anyway. And because these are meant to be rough and ready, they're meant to be rugged cameras where you can throw them about, you should be able to pretty much capture anything and anywhere doing extreme sports or doing what we do, MotoVlogging, putting these cameras in very precarious positions. You need them to survive little accidents. This camera has got zero protection. This is why I had this case, and I've got this little lens cover as well that went along with it. This isn't Insta360's thing, this is an aftermarket option. But let's get into the size differences between these two cameras. Now, I do have the premium lens guards on, which is why it bulges out a little bit like that. I've got the two lens guards, which, by the way, when you're installing these, definitely make sure to click it all the way in place. Watch the video that Insta360 provide on how to do it. It is tight. I mean, I'll see if I can get this off now live on camera, but yeah, there we go. It is a squeeze trying to get them on and off. Reviewers, apparently they have had these fall off whilst they're doing their, I don't know, their MotoVlogging or what have you. And yeah, make sure that you get them on there properly like that. There's a little notch right at the bottom with a color. This one's orange on these premium lens guards. It's got to be pointing down. If it's pointing down, that you know it's clicked in place. But in terms of the dimensions between these two cameras, the X2 is significantly lighter and significantly smaller, which is actually hilarious considering how big I thought this was when I first got it, at least compared to a GoPro anyway. These cameras are big, they are chunky, but the X4 is on a whole new level of chunk. You know what I mean? This thing's a chungus, it's huge. But to be honest with you, that doesn't really matter for the most part, because the types of shots that you're trying to get with a camera like this, you're putting it in places where the size doesn't matter that much. Not so much that you're having to accommodate for it in some other way, if you know what I mean. So for me, the size of it actually is perfect. It is heavier as well, but again, because you're going to have it mounted to things, well, the weight of it doesn't really matter. I suppose you'll probably feel a little bit more weight on the end of the invisible selfie stick with this camera, but I've had it on the end of a selfie stick and it's been absolutely fine for me. I've not really felt any massive sways from the bottom end because this camera is so heavy. I've not felt that at all. Having this huge display on the back as well, this is a huge upgrade. Considering the last one, it was just this teeny tiny circular display, and okay, it was kind of good enough, but being able to see the footage that you're capturing much clearer is definitely a big win. Another big win for this camera is its continuous recording. Now, what I mean by that, or non-split recording, is probably how I should phrase it. Basically, with the X2, and I think this was an issue on the X3 as well, that if the footage got to about half hour long or so, it would then end that recording and then start another one. But the issue is that it would start recording, it could be up to 30 seconds later. I don't think it is that much, but it could be 10 seconds later, 15 seconds later, something like that. And when you're trying to sync up multiple cameras like we do for our motovlogging shoots, that makes it really inconvenient, because somehow then I've got to try and sync up the footage without having any sound cue. because that's what I do. I clap like that to get all the cameras synced up, because when you're out on the ride and you get all that wind noise blowing, you can't hear a bloody thing. So having that ability to synchronize all the cameras at the start and having that footage continuously roll whilst you're on a shoot is a big upgrade as well in this iteration. I'm not sure if they could do some kind of software update or something like that for these older ones to enable that functionality, but yeah, it is a bit of a pain with these older ones, but luckily it's gone with the newer one. Now, Insta360 have not told me to say anything about the camera, and I think that's a good thing, because despite the fact they sent this over to me, I want to be as honest with you guys as possible about the functionality and whether or not I actually recommend a camera like this. If it was something that I would have bought myself, I mean, after all, I did buy this one, but would I have bought that one? Well, that's what we're here to find out. So when it comes to the specs of these cameras, there's one thing to keep in mind. Despite the fact that shooting in 4K or 5.7K might sound like a huge resolution, that is being wrapped around a 360-degree view of the image. So when you actually flatten that image out on a 16:9 as I do here, or maybe even a 9:16, depending on what type of social media you're uploading to, then the resolution is a hell of a lot less. For the most part, if you're shooting at 5.7K with this, or maybe even 8K, you could shrink it down to 1440p, but between 1080p and 1440p is not really much of a difference when you're flattening the image out in post. So just keep that in mind with the specs of these cameras. But speaking of which, let's talk the specs. So the Insta360 X4 can shoot up to 8K at 30 FPS, 5.7K plus at 30 FPS, which we'll explain in a little bit, 5.7K at 60 FPS, and 4K at 100 FPS. Now for me, that's a big deal. The fact that this camera can shoot 5.7K at 60 FPS, that is pretty much what I have set up with this camera at the moment, but this can only shoot up to 30 FPS. In fact, it can only shoot up to 50 FPS with even the lowest resolution settings. And it's really jarring when you've got one picture that is at 60 FPS and you transition over to the 360 camera and it's at 30 or maybe even 50. I like to try and keep the frame rate the same or as similar as possible. The fact that this camera offers me that choice is, again, a huge upgrade for the content that we like to shoot, where it's constantly in motion. Having that higher frame rate really does make a difference to the overall fluidity and crispness of the image, I suppose. So from a single lens perspective, the X4 can shoot 4K at 60 FPS. Again, that is huge. With this one, it could only do 1440p. And I think that was at 50 FPS. It might even be 30 FPS as single lens. And the problem with that is that it limits the overall functionality of the camera. Believe it or not, I wish I could use the single lens mode more often than the 360, or at least I would be using it more if it was really an option. One annoying thing about this camera, and I hope that Insta360 can fix this in a future update, is if you want to shoot at single lens mode, you have to shoot it like this. You can't shoot it like this. You can rotate it around, so you shoot like this. So for example, if I wanted to attach it to my helmet for a POV perspective, so I'd have it something like this, you know, on the helmet here in this perspective. It can only do 1440p at 30 FPS in this mode, because it thinks it's 9:16, not 16:9, which seems really counterintuitive because it wants to shoot 16:9 when it's upright like this. So this is the way how you can get the full 4K 60 FPS from a single lens mode, but you can't have it this way. A little bit backwards in my opinion, if you ask me, and it does limit what I can do in terms of POV, because I'm not being funny with you, we'll get onto this a little bit later on, but shooting a single lens mode for a POV video like we do on our MotoVlogs when we're out riding around, this is much easier to work with and edit than it is if I set it up as a 360 footage. Because yeah, you could hold it like this, have the POV like that, and just have it record 360 footage. So the issue with that is that it has horizon leveling. So as I'm turning around, as I'm moving with the bike, it locks. It doesn't follow the head movement of the rider. it locks the horizon. And that doesn't work all that great with POV footage that we shoot on a regular basis. So the X4 does have the option to take picture stills, and despite the fact that it's nice having that functionality, to be perfectly honest with you, just use your phone. Your phone is going to be much better at taking pictures. The issue is with the wide angle nature of the lens. You don't really get a lot of focus where you're trying to focus, if you know what I mean. Like if you're trying to take a selfie or something like that, you get more, you get a better distribution of focus around you, but you don't get a lot of definition where you really need it, like if you're trying to take a portrait photo or something like that. Photos from your phone are probably going to be a hell of a lot better than what the Insta360 can do, and even though it's not designed to be taking pictures, I thought it was something that was worth mentioning. Just in case you're ever caught short, you don't have your phone, you've got this with you, and you want to take a still, it can do it. When it comes to the night functionality of these cameras, they're the same as they always been. The sensors are really tiny, so in low light conditions, they're really not going to capture an awful lot, and if they do, it just looks all pixelated and artifacting everywhere. That's not the environment really for these types of cameras, and same with GoPros as well. They're all the same. They're not very good in low light conditions. Even in dusky conditions, these cameras can really struggle. Yeah, if you're going to use these cameras, the best pictures you're going to get, the best videos you're going to get are going to be during the day with the best possible lighting conditions. So let's talk a little bit about the 5.7K mode. The way how they advertise it is similar to 8K in terms of sharpness, but with a smaller file size. So it's not really a resolution that I'm going to use, I don't think. For the most part, I want that smooth frame rate. The fact that I can shoot 5.7K at 60 FPS is all that I need, but if you are trying to get more cinematic kind of look, then you can use a lower frame rate so you can get a much higher definition. You can get up to 8K, which will use up a lot of memory really quickly. I've got a 512 gig SD card with this one, so that is something to keep in mind about the file sizes. Like half an hour of footage at 8K, that could be 100 gig, could be more than 100, could be 150 gig. So just keep that in mind if you are looking to maybe try and use the higher resolutions of these cameras. I might look at doing it at some point, see what the definition is really like, but I don't think at this point I'm willing to sacrifice the overall sharpness for the frame rate. Frame rate for me is more important for the types of videos that we shoot. In terms of battery life as well, these cameras are really good. To be fair, so was the X2. The X2, I think I used to be able to get up to an hour of footage with the X2. It's the same with the X4. If anything, I could probably even get more than that with a lower resolution like the 5.7K that I'm using at the moment. I've not had a battery outage whatsoever whilst I've been out on a shoot, and my shoots can last up to a couple of hours. Not that it's recording the whole time, if you know what I mean, but if you are recording up to an hour with this type of camera, with the X4, you're going to be absolutely fine. So those are pretty much all the specs. I mean, in terms of actually using the camera, it's quite intuitive for the most part. You just turn it on and shoot. The use of the camera isn't an issue. For me, an issue is more with the post stuff, with the editing. So I use Premiere Pro to edit all of our videos, and Insta360 footage always struggles. I don't know if it's a Premiere Pro thing, Premiere Pro issue, or an Insta360 issue, but the footage as you're trying to preview it goes very choppy. It was bad on the X2. It's on another level of bad on the X4. I don't know if it's because of that extra frame rate with that higher resolution. I don't know. It's not very nice to edit for the type of content that we shoot, for aspiring professionals, if you like. For people who are posting to TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, if you're doing shorts, YouTube shorts, you're not going to have any problems editing. I think the best editing experience is either using the phone app or actually using the Insta360 software to edit the video. So, because the biggest issue that I have is, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I like to sync all of the video clips together. And so I can't just take clips of the 360 footage and then just put them in the timeline. I have to have all of the clips in line and in sync, and then I can cut and splice whatever I want to from there. I've seen suggestions on Reddit and things like that about importing the 360 footage into the Insta360 software, doing all the view finding and what have you that you want in that app, exporting it, and then bringing that into Premiere Pro. The issue with that is efficiency. Editing them, it means that you're having to export the video twice. One, that's not good for compression, so you're going to get a lower resolution at the end. Well, you're not going to get a lower resolution, you're going to get a lower quality, a lower sharpness in the final product. And it's just, again, just inefficient. I don't want to spend half an hour to an hour working on and exporting a 360 video to then work another hour, 2 hours editing the actual content itself. This is one thing that 360 footage is really let down by, is the editing process, at least for someone like myself who genuinely is trying to use these cameras for professional purposes. You don't really see these cameras being used a lot by professionals, and that might be why, because editing the footage is such a pain. Working with footage is fine, but when you're trying to play it back, or even if you're trying to add other effects to the footage, no chance. And this is on a computer that is what are my specs at the moment? I've got a 5800X 3D from AMD as a processor, 16 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. My graphics card is a Radeon 7900 XT, and all the footage, all my editing is done off of an SSD as well. And yes, it does have hardware encoding, hardware acceleration, things like that. And even with all that, even if you put the preview window at its lowest resolution possible, it still gets very choppy. To such a point where sometimes it's actually crashed out Premiere Pro and I've lost work. So this for me is perhaps the biggest drawback to one of these cameras, is not the use, the functionality, or even general use. It's the editing process, at least for the type of content that we shoot. Like I said, if it's for certain memories, if it's for personal use, then yeah, it's perfect. You can capture absolutely everything all around you. Doesn't matter where the camera is pointing or where it's looking, it can capture pretty much everything. So perfect for capturing life events, you know, parts of your life that are meaningful or once in a lifetime opportunities, things like that. These types of cameras are really good for, but other than that, unfortunately, I struggle to find a use case unless very specific for these types of cameras for professionals or aspiring professionals. Very difficult to work with in editors like Premiere Pro. And to be fair, yeah, working with the Insta360 software is absolutely fine. I wish there was some way they could integrate that with Premiere Pro so it would make the experience a bit more seamless. And I think this is where Insta360 can make the most improvement, is by focusing a little bit more on the professional use cases for something like this, rather than just taking short clips. Like, I've even tried importing the clips from the Insta360 to my phone and exporting to my phone, like the whole thing of like a 30-minute video. Nah, it takes an age. No chance. The most efficient way to work with this is either through the Insta360 app, or you just bear with the annoying stuttery preview. And it does take longer to export as well, by the way. If you're using something like Premiere Pro to export your footage, it will take longer. So for me at the moment, if it's a 20-minute video or so, all in all, it will take roughly about an hour to export. Depending on how much 360 footage I use, it could be up to 2 hours, an hour and a half, 2 hours to export the footage. So unfortunately, it kind of encourages me to use less of the 360 footage, despite the fact that you can get some really cool shots with it, because I don't want to have that ultra long export time. We upload videos 3 times a week. If I have to wait just half an hour longer, that's half hour that's eating into my time to create thumbnails or my time to do other things, you know? And it's just not something that I'm prepared to do. Like, I couldn't do a whole video, a whole shoot using just this 360 camera and exporting all of that at once for one video. I couldn't do it. It just wouldn't be feasible for a channel like ours. If you want to spend the time and you have patience, then yeah, that's great. But when you're on a production schedule, you want to try and get your content out as quickly as you can, then these cameras may let you down a little bit. But there you have it, everybody. That's the thing about these cameras. There are certain types of shots that you can only take with cameras like these. And the fact that they are so reliable as well, Insta360 on the whole have been very reliable. For capturing life events, once in a lifetime moments, these cameras are absolutely perfect, and I'd heavily recommend them for personal use. For professional use, however, yes, you can work with them, but they are going to be less efficient and they're going to be a little bit harder to work with. That's the only real criticism I have. Everything else of this camera is really good. The resolution is great, the frame rate is great, the way how the camera operates and functions is great. The amount of integration that it has with the phone app is great. If you're just out and about, you're taking videos and things like that, it's so easy to import to your phone, export a short clip. It could be up to 3 or 4 minutes long, and it'll be a fairly quick process. It will drain your battery a little bit, but it's really convenient and swift. Whereas if you try to take this footage and work with it in something like Premiere Pro or maybe even another kind of video editing software, you're going to really struggle, I think. At least that is in my personal experience with these types of cameras. I've been using them for a good few years now. I think we got this Insta360 X4 a couple of years ago. Maybe it was a little bit longer than that. And for a period of time, I stopped using it. Not because I didn't want to use it, but because editing the footage was so difficult. Upgrading my computer has helped a little bit in that regard, but it's still far from perfect. But anyway, there you have it, everybody. I hope that this video has been informative, and if you're looking to buy one of these cameras, I hope it's helped you make a decision on whether or not you want one. These are expensive cameras. I think they're going for around about £450–500 at the moment. If you wait for a little bit longer, Black Friday sales, you could get them as low as £400 maybe. I don't know, we'll see. And that's one other thing actually to keep in mind as well, that these cameras don't really function very well on their own. You do need to have accessories with them. Having that invisible selfie stick, having the clamps and what have you, especially if you're going to try and get certain types of shots for motovlogging like we do, you need to have the clamps. Otherwise, it's kind of unusable, really. If you holding it like this and taking videos like this isn't the most efficient way of doing it. Definitely having at least the invisible selfie stick is, for me, the first accessory that you should buy when it comes to getting one of these cameras. So yeah, despite the fact that buying the camera might be expensive, you probably will have to spend another £30–40, maybe a little bit more than that on the accessories, which, to be honest with you, that's what makes this camera really good, are the accessories. Without them, this camera would be useless. And Insta360 stuff, they've sent me so much, and it's all really good quality stuff. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to get accessories for this camera, get the Insta360 stuff. It is the best stuff that I've used. Seriously, it's really damn good. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this one. As always, go ahead, leave that like, hit that subscribe button if you want to watch more content like this, and we will catch you all in the next video. Everyone, take care, ride safe.